This is April 24th, 2024, which is about a month after the main trials, which I've shown in previous videos. Now it's time for the third-party inspection. On the previous day, they did a slow fire-up and a few limited runs, and today the inspector is on site and they are going to put the Shay through some more tests. This is on the narrow-gauge Cowichan Valley Railway, which was closed to visitors at the time. The Cowichan Valley Railway is completely within the private grounds of the BC Forest Discovery Centre in North Cowichan on Vancouver Island. One of the main changes to the locomotive, compared to previous runs a month earlier, is that the whistle has changed. A 4-chime Kinsley is now installed, and it sounds great. on the assumption that the locomotive was going to do another lap around the track with the cars, I set up at this spot at the bottom of the Drinkwater Cut, looking up, hoping to get a photograph like this one that I had gotten the previous year with the number 25 locomotive. I was by myself, and I knew that at some point in the day they would have finished their work, but I wasn't quite sure. And then eventually I heard the clues. I heard the sustained ringing of the bell and the 3 toots of the whistle, and that told me that the locomotive was backing into the Y, back to the water source, or finished for the day. And so I walked to the upper grounds. I found the locomotive, chatted with the crew, and determined that they were done for the day, but they would be taking it to the shop area. So that's where I decided to set up for my final scenes. I set up with 2 cameras, one at either end of the switchback track, and then waited for the locomotive. With my 2 cameras set for video, I moved to the middle with a 3rd camera for still photographs. This final movement of the day was light engine with the third-party inspector in the engineer's seat, so we got to hear his playing of the steam whistle. And yes, the steam safety valve works. This is a good time to explain some context for this scene. The track that goes from the main line up to the shop track is 6.5% grade on average and 9.0% at its steepest point. It is the type of grade that the Shay locomotive was made for, but it's also the type of grade that presents lots of challenges to both the fireman and engineer when the locomotive is reversed up this grade. On this day, 2 things happened as the locomotive got to the top of the switchback. The safety valve released, and you see all the white water condensate, and it was loud, and also a lot of black smoke happened. Black smoke is not uncommon to happen in this location. It's a balance between overfiring and underfiring, and the engine's working really hard. It's better to overfire a bit and be on the safe side. At the top of the hill, the throttle was closing when the fire was still roaring. This caused a sudden spike in steam pressure, causing the safety valve to open. Now, on level ground, this would be controlled by the water feed rate, but on a very steep grade, they didn't want to risk priming happening. It's a balance act. These people know what they're doing. I apologize for the OCD trigger of the number plate not being straight throughout this video, but they straightened the plate at the end here at the shop for these still photographs. I have all of my photographs in a Flickr album online, and I've posted the link for this in the video description. The Hillcrest No. 1 is a steam locomotive built to the patented design of Ephraim Shay by Lima Locomotive Works in Lima, Ohio, USA. This locomotive is a 24-ton Class-B model Shay. That means 3 cylinders and 2 trucks, and its actual present-era weight is around 28 tons. This Shay was built by Lima in 1920 as a narrow-gauge, oil-burning stock model. She was construction number 3147. Hillcrest Lumber Company on Vancouver Island was looking for a new standard gauge small locomotive, and they ordered this one, pending a conversion at the Ohio factory to standard gauge and wood burning. She was delivered to Hillcrest Lumber on Vancouver Island in early 1921, and she worked for Hillcrest Lumber and then for McNeil and Munn, both in the Sahtlam area of the Cowichan Valley. She eventually ended up for resale at Mayo Lumber in 1943. She was sold to the Osborne Bay Wharf Company and worked a forest industry deep-sea wharf at Crofton from 1947 to 1963. She then went to Hillcrest Lumber at Massachi Lake for the purpose of conversion back to narrow gauge and oil burning in preparation for its donation to the newly formed Cowichan Valley Forest Museum for its narrow gauge Cowichan Valley Railway visitor train. The Forest Museum opened to the public in May 1965. The Hillcrest No. 1 was one of the steam locomotives that regularly pulled a visitor train at the Forest Museum, and it did this from the late 1960s until the late 1990s. By the way, the Forest Museum is now known as the BC Forest Discovery Centre, and the Hillcrest No. 1 is the locomotive that appears on the center's logo. After this locomotive's most recent working era ended in 1998, there followed a period of display and storage pending an eventual rebuild. That rebuild project commenced in 2016 and was completed in 2024, with many challenges met by the tenacity and generosity of volunteers, donors, and sponsor suppliers. I was a latecomer in documenting this project, starting with glimpses of various pieces outside the lower shed in 2021. Over the next 3 years, I saw more and more of the project, including various unpowered moves, and then eventually with the Shay under steam doing trials on the main line.